Good afternoon, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the one-day orientation program on understanding online education, a policy perspective. On behalf of the Center for Staff Training and Development, I welcome the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sitaram Rao Garu, onto the stage. I also welcome Professor Vasuki Bellavadi to come onto the dais, please. I request Professor Chakrapani, the Director CSTD, to come and occupy his chair on the dais. I now request the dignitaries to start the session by lighting the lamp. I now request the Director CSTD, Professor Chakrapani sir, to take over the proceedings.
Good afternoon, everybody. Respected Vice Chancellor, sir, the chief guest of today's orientation lecture program on understanding online education, and Professor Vasuki Bellavadi, Fellow, UNESCO Fellow at University of Hyderabad. More than that, is friend of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. I welcome you, sir. You are all our teachers. After 9 years also, still they remember you and your lectures, your advices, and your training for them. When Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University started CSTD, Center for Staff Training and Development, it is almost 30 years back. It is felt that the trainings are continuous kind of activities. It is part and parcel of career of every teacher, and the teachers must update their skills, their knowledge, and their understanding, so that they can perform their duties in better and in desirable manner. Keeping that in view, this organization, CSTD, if you look at the first decade, our training programs mostly on curriculum development. Please. Curriculum development, audiovisual material development, and also study center management, The initial establishment aspects. The first decade, we have concentrated more on initial establishment of this university. And the second decade, we focused on quality assessment and quality improvement aspects, particularly advanced stage of student support services, teleconferences, and quality in teleconferences, where actually you are instrumental and you played very key role to train all of our teachers in performing in better way in audiovisual programs development and also e-learning. Long back, almost a decade ago, we have initiated a discussion on e-learning and online education systems. So our teachers they are familiar with all the basic concepts of basic aspects of e-learning and online education. Sir, as the time is now, as time demands, every teacher must learn and understand and will be in a position to adapt online education tools, techniques, and use online platforms. That is maybe because of I don't want to give complete credit to COVID, but it may maybe it fastened the whole process. But for the last 5 years, five to 10 years, entire world is moving towards acquiring new technologies in teaching and learning, and e-learning platforms and e-learning mechanisms, e-learning tools, and edutech is emerging as a major business of IT companies in the last 5-6 years. In this context, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University also very strongly felt we should also enter into complete online kind of systems. Of course, we are using online materials, audiovisual materials, and other materials as supplementary materials to our regular courseware. But recently, we have started one Center for Online Learning, and Dr. Saroja is holding the directorship, and and that center is now gearing up to introduce at least certain modules, maybe in the form of SWAYAM or some other models. So now we are trying to implement online, and recently CSTD has organized one program, MOOC, on online how to prepare online education material for SWAYAM. That gave a kind of understanding on different elements of online learning to our teachers. The second issue for this program is university now gearing up to go for NAAC accreditation. As you know, for NAAC, online is also one of the important criteria. One of the important element where we want to understand the whole process of online. Anyway, if we start online centers and online training also, we may not start online courses immediately because Government of India put certain restrictions. UGC has, they have evolved certain criteria for online. Until and unless we get A++, we cannot offer direct online programs. And also, there are a lot of restrictions are there. In this context, in this NAAC context, as well as in this paradigm shift kind of development in technology, and in the new phase of distance education is emerging now because of COVID and post-COVID environment. Keeping all this in view, CSTD thought of having this kind of program. And on the other hand, Honorable Vice Chancellor is always insisting us to have a policy. Of course, not only our Vice Chancellor, even UGC also made it a mandatory to have online education policy to all the universities. Until and unless we have an online education policy, which is approved by UGC, we cannot have our own online programs. So because of keeping in view of all these preconditions, CSTD today is organizing this program titled Understanding Online Education, a Policy Perspective. When we discussed all these aspects, we several names came across, but we firmly felt Dr. Professor Vasuki Belawadi is the right person, because number one, he knows what is what online at global level, and also United Nations level, and University of Hyderabad or Telangana and Hyderabad level, and moreover, he is familiar with our activity, our programs, and our nature of work, and our clientele also. So we requested him to come over here. I'm happy, and I thank you, sir, for honoring our request and coming over to deliver this lecture. Now, I request our Vice Chancellor, is the chief guest of today's event, and his vision, in fact, for the last 6 months is after us to develop online systems in this university. With his support and guidance, and according to his vision only, university has created online education center, as well as CSTD is taking up programs to train our teachers in online platforms. Not only earlier same course development program, now probably I'm happy to announce next week we are issuing a notification, other notification for a training program, 10 days training program on blended learning, where computer education as well as online related content development also will be given. So we are very shortly, we are going to issue that notification also. SEMCA has given license to us, Commonwealth of Learning also supporting us, and we have entered an agreement with SEMCA to train higher education teachers from Telangana as well as Andhra Pradesh. So I take this opportunity to thank our Vice Chancellor for his support. Now I request Honorable Vice Chancellor to say a few words prior to the lecture. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon to all. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to participate in this program. Honorable Chief Guest and main speaker of the day, Professor Vasuki Belawadi, is a good friend and well-wisher of our university since a long time. I am very happy he has accepted our invitation and came over here to speak on online education from policy perspective. Sir, Professor Chakrapani, Director CSTD, has given us the backdrop of this program in detail. And also he explained how the focus of the CSTD training programs are shifted over a period of 30 years, from quality, focusing on qualitative aspects and study material production, like that. So many audio video lessons production and like that. Now time has come to focus our training programs on the online education and online learning. And we all of us know that even the new National Education Policy of 2020 has recognized the multimedia and multi-mode of education. Though it has not said anything about the open universities and all that, indirectly, it has recognized the role of open universities in increasing the gross enrollment ratio in higher education. And it also emphasized on the quality aspects more in ODL as well as in regular education. Now, the multimedia and multi-mode, whatever we say, whether it is hybrid mode or blended mode of teaching and learning, has become order of the day. So even regular universities, central universities, IITs or IIMs, or almost all top higher education institutions are also slowly either shifted or shifting towards this blended mode of teaching and learning. And there is no other way to open universities also to strengthen ourselves in the multimedia and multi-mode approach. You know, this in multi-mode, we have to depend upon offline, some offline classes, online classes, supplying print material, and also audio, video, study material, and then online classes and online education also. All these put together, it will become a blended mode. But which mode is most useful to which program depends upon our discretion to judge to which mode should be followed to which program. If it is a research program, we give more importance to face-to-face learning, guidance from supervisor. Like that, it will be more face-to-face interaction system will be followed. That is the reason we encourage the students to coursework and also seminars and all that we give focus on that. But in some other courses, for example, small courses are there, 2 credits. We need not go for offline classroom teaching. Just we can ask them to attend the online classes and learn from the online material. If possible, they can make the same course in online also. Like that, it all depends upon how best we can use this mode and medias. Media means, again, now online system is totally internet-based media, two-way interaction. But where this audio media, that is a different. Either we depend upon the another medium, is either AR or television or other channels. So we have traditional, our conventional classroom teaching is also there. So keeping these aspects in view, especially going for NAAC accreditation and also starting Center for Online Education in our university. And slowly we are gearing up to introduce more online courses. And we should also link up our online education platform with the SWAYAM platform also. So there will be so many other related issues are there. And we should also identify the courses which are available on SWAYAM platform. How and which type of courses are relevant to us according to our syllabus and all that. We have to do a lot of exercise in this online education system. So every teacher, it is a must nowadays to undergo sort of training to understand the system and the processes of online education and adapt ourselves to the new trends which are coming up in the online mode of education. So definitely in the future, we have to adopt this online education And we have to use this mode and media both effectively for our higher education. And one more thing I wanted to say, the private players are also coming in a large way into the market. I think, sir, recently one article is there in the Economic and Political Weekly, EduTech Leviathan, written by some, I did not remember the authors. You must have read it. But this competition from private sector is also very serious. But how best we can survive in this competitive world, and how best we can strengthen our online education platforms in our university, because public sector universities are also very number of institutions are there. There is need for mutual cooperation and assistance, and definitely we look ahead and look forward to take help and assistance and services from like Hyderabad Central University, and IIT is also there here. And there are so many other institutions where they are ahead, they are forward than us. And we take their support and services to go forward to in the sector of online education to strengthen our university also. Sir, thank you very much. I don't want to take much of the time. I also came here with a lot of interest to hear you. Thank you once again, sir, for coming over here and accepting our invitation to educate us on the various aspects related to online education, including the policy. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, sir. As you rightly said, online education is must and it is need of the hour. Yes, sir. Private players, in fact, ruling the online education now. You can take the case of BRAOU-Live. And not only BRAOU-Live, sir, entire world, I think in next 2-3 years, the classrooms are replaced by online platforms and online players. Virtual, every classroom will be going to be a virtual classroom. And, like in earlier days, C dot, I don't know, the computer trends. Now the entire computer business is trending towards online education tools. And recently, in recent budget also, Government of India is focusing on digital universities and digital, everything digital. And classrooms also going to be digital. And now they have sanctioned 200 television channels, digital television channels. I think Telugu is also going to have 10 to 12 channels in Telugu language for online education, only for education. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, sometimes we cannot introduce people sufficiently. Or some people, introduction is very big difficult because of their wide variety of works and their huge profiles and their quantum of work. When quantum of work is very big, we cannot describe them in 2 sentences or 5 sentences. But just you imagine, for a teacher who is among us like a friend, who always very comfortable and ease us. Just think, his books are prescribed books for 160 universities in the world. Mana friend, manatoti pakkana unda mana colleague, ఆయన పుస్తకాలు 160 యూనివర్సిటీలలో టెక్స్ట్స్ అంటే మనము ఆశ్చర్యపోతాం. And that book is video editing, sir, video production. Video production in a book, Oxford University probably. They published it. Any editions so far? The website update చేసిన నాటికి 10 impressions. Maybe now 11-12 impressions. That is like a Bible for video production. not only in book form, that is available in digital form also. I mean, CD-ROMs, I think probably first book on, not just, writing book like letters and, bringing them at one place and publish. Making that as a visual presentation also, that efforts really, sir, to introduce, I was searching, Google and somewhere, but it presented a whole website on you. So from that website, I cannot, take one, but then I wanted to take one that is volume of 10 impressions. Thank you for being with us, sir. And not only now, your support. Whenever I call you, I mean, for the last 10 years, maybe, whenever we, from this university, whenever we call you, you are always there to help us and guide us. Sir, I don't want to take much time. I welcome you. Thank you for, once again, thank you for accepting our invitation. Listen.
I forgot to say one thing. Sir, as I said that we need your support and encouragement and help whenever I know that you will accept our request. Sir, we have included you in the policy review committee. We have prepared a draft policy related to online education. So you are there in that committee. I request we will send you a date for having that meeting and to review that policy. Why is it necessary and fine tune it according to our needs. And at the same time, sir, we also wanted to include you in the EMRRC advisory committee, Electronic Media Resource and Research Center. We have recently changed our nomenclature AVPRC into EMRRC. So we also wanted to include you in the advisory committee, sir. Whenever our problems are there, we will approach you and we seek your support and encouragement for our university. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So, please.
Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor Chakrapani, and all my colleagues who are with me here today. Thank you very much for your patience and your eagerness to come over here. I will not take a lot of your time. I promise. I will just lay out what a policy document should look like and what could be included in the policy and how it helps any organization. And what I'm going to speak comes from our experience at University of Hyderabad, because we developed a online education policy for University of Hyderabad. We also consulted a few experts, worked on a document like Vice Chancellor sir said. You know, we also worked on a draft, reworked on it, and tried to align it with the university goals and things like that. So it did take a while for us to come up with the policy. And when Professor Chakrapani told me that B.R. Ambedkar Open University plans to set up a policy, I was excited because ours is a, in your parlance, we call it a face-to-face university, and yours is an open university. And working on an online education policy for an open university is kind of exciting for me because the mode of teaching is totally different. Your experiences are totally different. Experiences like ours are totally different. So I saw it as another learning experience for me. So when the Vice Chancellor says that, I should be on the policy review committee, I'll take this opportunity to thank you once again, because it gives me another learning opportunity to work on a policy document that should be designed for an open university. So today what I will do is quickly take you through how does this go down? Page down. Huh? Okay. Page down here. Okay. So I'll quickly take you through what is expected of a policy document per se. Okay. So when I did some homework, when we were developing a policy, I did some homework, and I realized that a policy is a set of guidelines to achieve a set of goals. Okay, so what we perhaps need to do is first write down our goals. What is it that we want to achieve by way of online education? Okay, so we write down our goals and then work backwards towards writing down a policy document. So I went through the B.R. Ambedkar Open University website. You have a list of some 7 or 8 objectives that are listed on the website. Now, those are the objectives of the university that you want to provide access to education, you want to provide access to a large number of people, and so on and so forth. There are 8 or 9 objectives. But when it comes to a policy document on e-learning, that is on online education, you may have to have a set of goals as to what is it that you want to achieve through online learning. Okay, some of them may align with the objectives that you have already listed. Some of them may already align with the objectives that you have already listed on your website, but some of it you may have to redraft, given that those objectives were written a long time ago. Times have changed, so you may have to redraft it a little bit. Now, the major characteristic of a policy document is that it very clearly tells us what every stakeholder is supposed to do. When I talk of stakeholders, I basically mean internal stakeholders, all of us sitting here. Each one of us sitting here, the office staff, you have something like 7 or 8 wings in the university. There is a CSTD, there is a materials management wing, so there are 7 or 8 wings. All of them need to work together to achieve those goals and objectives. So the policy document will lay down guidelines on how all of you need to come together to achieve those goals in terms of online education. Now, it is up to you to decide whether you want to continue to offer education by printing books and distributing them. That is up to you to decide. But if you want to go completely online, then maybe your policy will need to be tilted towards that. So you have a policy document on the one side, which gives us guidelines on how the university and how every staffer in this university needs to work to achieve a set of goals. And in order to achieve those goals, we also write down procedures. All of us are aware of procedures, right? I mean, we go through them on a daily basis. What is the procedure for a student to enroll in this university? They have to write an entrance exam, or they have to apply to the university online. There is a certain procedure. So to achieve those goals, there is a policy document, and within the policy document, to achieve some of those goals, you have a procedure document. So you need to write down your own procedures based on the policy document. I'm sure many of those procedures are already in place. You only need to adapt them to the online environment. Most of the procedures, I'm sure you already have a lot of those procedures. You just have to adapt them to the online environment. So in summary, while a policy defines an approach, while a policy document defines an approach to what you will be adopting, procedures define what is expected of each one of us. And here, when I talk of procedures, I am also bringing in external stakeholders. When I say external stakeholders, I am also talking about students, their parents, all of these things. They are expected to follow certain procedures vis-a-vis the university, right? I'm just giving you some random example. Parents are expected to pay the fee of their ward for their education. That is an expectation. That is a procedure that they need to follow in order to make sure that their kid gets the education from B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Students are required to attend contact classes, for example. If you go online, will you still require contact classes? Needs to be laid down in the procedures document. Okay. So a policy basically is like, what should I say? It is like a tent. It is like a tent. And within the tent, there are several umbrellas, which are basically telling you how this tent will operate and how each of these umbrellas need to work towards making the tent, effective. So the question that comes up next is, why do we need a policy? We already have procedures. We already have, all these things already laid out for us. Why do we need another policy like Professor Chakrapani was saying, an online education policy? Why do we need that policy? There are several reasons why you might need that policy. With the Vice Chancellor's permission, and just to recall what Professor Chakrapani was saying, Professor Sitaram Rao has been pushing Professor Chakrapani to work on an online education policy for the last 6 months. That's what he told us just now. Okay. Now, Professor Sitaram Rao is interested in certain things. He wants to develop the university in a certain manner. Leaders change. Okay. Leaders change. Most times what happens is when the leaders change, the policy changes. The approach of the university itself changes. Hey, what's up? Kyun kar rahe hain? Change karo. Okay. And now that's not just at the university level. That also happens at the state level, at the central level. Okay. So unless there is a broad policy that defines, that tells us how the university should be working, we will be allowing the university to work at the whim and fancy of a set of leaders who will be governing us. So having a policy in place always helps us in saying, sir, this is a policy that has been developed. Should we deviate from this policy, or should we amend this policy to the changing times? Let us examine that. But at the same time, it is also important for the organization to tell the world that this is how we are going to operate. This is our policy vis-a-vis, students from backward communities, for example. Students from backward communities or socioeconomically backward communities. This is our policy. It is important to tell the world that you have adopted this policy and this is how we are going to work for the betterment of students and to provide them quality education. The other important reason is management becomes, less stressful. When there is already a policy document that all of us can refer to, and if that policy document is available online, you don't have to keep running to the Vice Chancellor on clarification for everything. So when there is a policy document, there is a accompanying procedures document as well. So you don't have to keep running to the Vice Chancellor and waste your time and his time for every piece of information or clarification that you need from him or her. There is already a laid down procedure. All it requires us to do is to follow it for a few years and review if those procedures need any changes or not. Simple. There could be procedures that are hampering our work. Okay, so we need to also review the procedure document after a point of time, so that we can if there is a scope for us to reduce procedures, we could go ahead and do that. Okay, now policy documents, procedural documents also make employees accountable to the work that they are doing. Because you have a laid down procedure. Has an employee followed that procedure or not becomes the question. If the employee has followed procedure, the employee is accountable. Simple. There ends the matter. We don't have to spend time debating whether the employee was accountable or not. There is a clearly laid down procedure. Has that been followed or not? Simple. Okay. Professor Chakrapani was also mentioning about a quality, about how in the second decade you focused on quality. Okay. Now, perhaps is the time for you to also write down a policy for quality management if you are to go in for online education. How do you maintain quality when it comes to online education, not just in terms of delivery of lessons, but also in terms of, quality? What do students feel about the quality of the lessons that are being offered? Do we have very clearly laid down checklists for each stage of production of the material? Those come in the procedural documents, of course. But your policy could definitely have a quality component where you can definitely say that the university will check for quality against A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever that is. Okay, if you are going in for an online education policy, that is perhaps a very important. Now I come back to university leaders again, because I have seen it in my own university. And when leaders change, their priorities change. Their priorities for the university also changes. Therefore, allocation of resources also undergoes a change. Okay. I've seen it in several other universities as well, where when the academic administrators change, the top person changes. In some academic administrators' minds, infrastructure is the most important thing. In some academic administrators' minds, quality of the teachers and their teaching is the most important thing. In some academic administrators' minds, the labs must be up to date. So different academic administrators, because they also come from the same society that we come from, right? They have also gone through the same socialization that we have gone through. Therefore, each one comes up with their own priorities, but nothing wrong with that. But as long as resources for online education are not hampered very much. So how do you ensure that? You ensure that by putting it in the policy document that adequate resources will be allocated, whether it is human resource or material resource. So if it is a policy of the university that adequate resources will be provided for online education, then it becomes the responsibility of the subsequent leaders as well. Today, Professor Sitaram Rao may be interested. Tomorrow, if somebody else becomes Vice Chancellor, क्या online कुछ उससे कुछ भी काम नहीं होता, waste है बोल के ignore kar dete. They will totally ignore it. So it's important that we have such things in the policy document so that, even when the leader changes, your basic work doesn't get affected. So just a word of caution. While it's important to put down things in a policy document, it is also important for us to keep it a bit flexible. It's not like 10 commandments on a stone that once you check case వదిలేసినామంటే ఇంకా జీవితాంతం అదే పాలసీ ఉండాలని ఎక్కడ లేదు. It has not, no policy document is sculpted in stone. Policy documents also undergo change with changing times, with changing, tomorrow if the technology drastically changes, you can't be stuck with a procedural document and a policy document which was written some 14 years ago. Okay, policy documents also need revision, so we need to work on those revisions once in a while. Otherwise, what happens is you get stuck while others are revising their policies and moving ahead. You tend to get stuck in 2014. Okay, so it's important also to bear in mind that policy documents can also be revised. We are all aware of the new education policy, right? New education policy 2020. The earlier one was 2014. 86. Imagine, 86 we had one policy, and until 2020 we didn't give it a damn. And we all keep, lamenting about our education system in the country over a cup of tea, right? Bar canteen mein, that's what we discuss most of the times. So policy documents also have to be revised once in a while. So now, when I talk of a policy document, it doesn't have to sound like it has been produced by a lawyer. No. It doesn't have to sound very legalese, whereas, zarurat nahi. Write it in a language that everybody understands. Okay? Write it in a language that everybody understands. And it becomes easier for people to follow the policy only when they understand it better. How many of you understand the documents written by lawyers? Right? Which is why we have a legal cell. Their job is to look at those documents and tell us, okay, sir, everything is fine. Right? Because we don't understand it. Your policy document doesn't have to be like that. Write it in a language that each one of us can understand. Okay? When you write a policy document for yourself, make sure that it allows you to write down well-defined procedures, which means that every statement that you make in the policy document has to be very, very clear. No scope for ambiguity. The university may want to is ambiguous. May want to matlab Sita Ramarao garu cheyalla odda. The university will. The university shall. Simple. Okay? No room for ambiguity. If there is no ambiguity in your policy document, there will be no ambiguity in your procedures document. Because everything in the procedures document flows out from the policy document. Like I said, even within 4 years, 5 years, etc., don't make it too very restrictive. Don't make the policy document so restrictive that it doesn't provide you with options for change. Technology changes every single year. Until yesterday, we were discussing 4G, right? This year, 5G is going to roll out in the country. I just changed my mobile last month and I'm cursing myself because I have to invest another 35,000 rupees when 5G comes in. Just imagine. So don't make it too very restrictive. Keep it open so that, when things change, you can also change your procedures, make sure that you can adapt them to the changing times. The most important thing is policy documents and procedure documents have to be available for everybody. How many of you have read your own university statutes and ordinances completely? Have you read the BRAOU Act? I'm sure it has been established by an act, right? How many of you have read the act? I see one hand going up. How many of you have read your statutes completely? No. Right? How many of you have read your ordinances completely? No. Let me let you in on a secret. Even I have not read my university statutes. Why is that? Why is that? Because that document is not readily available. If B.R. Ambedkar Open University Act was readily available for you, I have to run to the controller of exams for a copy of my statutes or ordinances. To my controller of exams, if I have to read ordinances. So unless it is available, how do you even read it? Why would you want to read it? And unless you read it, why would you want to follow procedures? And unless you read it, there is no way you will know the procedure and you will keep approaching, the head of Center for Online Learning or Chakrapani or Sita Ramarao Garu or head of any other unit. Sir, idetla cheyala. Sir, adetla cheyala. Sir, idetla cheyala. Sir, adetla cheyala. Because the procedure document is not available. If it was available, you would have simply gone to page number 52 and said, okay, this is how I will dispose certain items. Now, the other most important thing is that the policy document also cautions you on certain things. Okay, so it provides visual pointers for critical information. Okay, what does one do? I'm just giving a random example again. You are doing a blended class like this. There are some students sitting in front of you and you also want to do a class like this. And suddenly the power goes off. The number of students in the class are only 3. The number of students online are 45. Power chala gaya. Laptop band ho gaya. What is the next thing that you have to think of? Uninterrupted power supply as long as you are taking classes. Right? Your laptop and your internet must have uninterrupted power supply as long as I want to complete a class. So, your policy document must mention somewhere that infrastructure will have to be upgraded if necessary from time to time. Okay? Just a random example. So, what happens when a policy document is available? So what we normally do is, What we normally do is a policy is written down, reviewed, and it is adopted by the university, by the statutory bodies of the university, and it is made public for all the stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders. And then once it is adopted by the university, once the statutory bodies approve it, it is supposed to be adopted by the university. Once you do that, the organization chief delegates certain responsibilities. From the procedural document, he delegates certain responsibilities. Now, these people to whom powers have been delegated to also vest powers in the chief of the organization to review the policy document periodically. So it's a two-way process. It's happening both ways. While the Vice Chancellor, for example, delegates certain responsibilities to Professor Chakrapani and heads of several departments, several units, all of these people are also vesting, powers in the hands of the Vice Chancellor, which is flowing from, his own appointment order and from the acts, from the statutes and lots of other things. You are also empowering him to make necessary changes in the policy document once in a while. So it runs both ways. Now, you remember I had said that policy documents can be revised or should be revised once in a while to make it, adaptable to the situations. So how do we go about working on a policy for e-learning policy for B.R. Ambedkar Open University? There are 4 or 5 pointers that I thought I will alert ourselves on, so that when we sit down to write the policy or review the policy, we know what we are doing. The first thing is that B.R. Ambedkar Open University has its own objectives. Let us try and see if we can align the OEP document also to the broader objectives of the university. Second, open universities are governed by what? DEC, what is it? Bureau, right? Right. So you have the UGC, which gives you a list of or approves a list of all the degrees that one can give. You have Distance Education Bureau. Universities like ours have too many regulatory bodies. We have AICTE, we have Medical Council of India, we have Pharmacy Council, that council, this council, dental, mental, all kinds of councils. There are regulatory bodies sitting over us. And each one of them come up with their own rules. Okay. So your policy will have to perhaps look at the regulatory bodies that you are governed by, and your policy must be made within the framework of the regulations made by those regulatory bodies. Obviously, your policy cannot go beyond those regulations. Most of the times, the policy that is released by the regulatory body becomes or tends to become the foundation for your policy document. Okay, so it kind of becomes easier for you to write down your policy document. Some of the aspects of online education may need changes in your ordinances. Because if you're going to offer an online degree, if you're going to offer a certificate online, a degree online, then it is possible that your ordinances may need some change. So those things may have to be amended. Also, like I just said in the beginning of the program, most times we are used to printing books, packing them by program, by semester, whatever, and mailing it to the students. So they are supposed to read it on their own whenever there is an exam. Pardon me if I go wrong, please correct me. Whenever there is an exam or whenever there is a contract class, they're supposed to come for the contract class, attend them, and then later write the examination, get a certificate. That's the process, right? Now, there might have to be a shift in your approach itself. If UGC and Distance Education Bureau allows you to offer online courses, you may want to shift your entire approach. Okay, you may want to stop printing those books, which is a huge expenditure. And instead of writing those books, printing those books, and mailing them all the time, you may want to spend a little more time on revising your online lessons once in a while. You may want to reinvest, some of that money into resources that are required for delivery of online lessons. Okay, you may want to. Now, all this is dependent on how the university itself looks at, how it wants to make sure that education reaches the last mile. Okay, that's a decision that the university needs to make. And of course, how resources will be allocated for online education within B.R. Ambedkar. Okay, so that is something that one needs to keep in mind while doing a policy. Therefore, some of the major points that the policy could cover, and if the draft has already covered it, nothing like it, but these are things that came to my mind because it's an online education policy. The e-learning policy for B.R. Ambedkar Open University could cover the policy statement, for example, the vision statement, the objectives of the policy itself. Why are we writing down this policy document? Guiding principles for implementation of the policy. Infrastructure, what kind of infrastructure will the university put in place in order to implement this policy, whether it is software or hardware? What are the human resources that you will allocate or reallocate or repurpose? Existing human resources can also be repurposed for online education. So how do you go about doing that? If you are going to repurpose or reallocate existing human resources, some of them may require additional training. So that should also find space in the policy document. Is there going to be an advisory group for the university to implement, review, and keep implementing the online education policy effectively? So you may have to think of an advisory group. I'll leave that decision to you. And majorly, how are you going to administer online courses? Okay, that needs to be part of the policy document. So what will be the program approval process? What will be the types of programs that will be offered? Are you going to offer diploma programs? Are you going to offer only certificate programs? Are you going to offer only PG programs? Are you allowed to offer PhD programs online? Now, these are things that you need to include, the types of programs that you will be offering. How will you schedule those programs? Are you going to stick to the academic calendar of the university, or will you have a separate schedule for your online courses? That is something that you need to think about. What will be the maximum enrollments for each of these? Will you have, say, something like 30,000 people enrolling for the political science course? Now, if 30,000 people enroll for an online course on political science, MA in political science, how are you going to manage that course online? Will one teacher do it? Will two teachers do it? Will three teachers do it? If so, how are you going to ensure that the inputs that I provide, the inputs that Chakrapani provides, the inputs that Professor Sitaramarao provides are similar, if not the same? They should at least be similar, because they have all joined one program and 3 different teachers are administering it online. How do you manage that? How do you manage quality? These are things that one needs to. What happens to, and what kind of platform will you adopt for your online teaching? What happens to the intellectual property? When I say intellectual property, not just of the teachers, of the students as well. What happens to the intellectual property of the students? Say a student comes up with a fantastic theory during your online discussions, a political theory a student comes up with. What happens to that intellectual property? So these are things that the university needs to. For example, in our university, we are very clear. Any material produced by the student, as long as they are in our university, students of university, the intellectual property belongs to the university. Except for patents that are built out of lab experiments, where they are given to a particular faculty member, any other intellectual property becomes the property of the university by default. So that is something that you people need to look at. What kind of student support systems will you have in place? The most important thing is, one of the major oppositions to online teaching learning has been, ఏమన్నా సార్ అంత కాపీ కొట్టుకొని పాస్ అవుతున్నారు, పెద్ద ఏం నడుస్తున్నది సార్ ఆన్లైన్, చెత్త నడుస్తున్నది ఆన్లైన్. This is a comment that you will hear from across teachers. Okay, so how do you make sure that students adhere to an honor code, that they are respecting their own dignity and they are respecting their own integrity? What happens to the copyright, intellectual property? Again, so those things. And how are you going to make your online learning materials accessible to different people with different abilities? What happens to a student who cannot hear your lecture? How are you going to make it accessible to that student? Because there's no bar from a student with listening disabilities to take up your course. So how do you make that accessible to that student? So these are things that the policy document needs to cover. So I'm just suggesting this. If you have already had this in mind, perfectly all right. Otherwise, you could have a policy formulation committee. I am told that your NAC results are about to be declared shortly, and you may want to align your policy document completion with the release of the NAC results, so that as soon as your NAC results are out, like Professor Chakrapani said, if you get a good grade and you become eligible to offer online courses, you can start work on adopting the policy document immediately. Because I'm sure there are going to be approvals, and approvals do take time. Statutory bodies have to meet, they have to go through the document. Those also take time. Therefore, it makes sense perhaps to start working backwards with a probable date in mind when your NAC results are going to be out. So from there, if you start working backwards, you will have a policy document ready by the time your NAC results are out. So I'll stop it there. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for a very elaborative and detailed roadmap for Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University towards establishing a full-fledged online learning center. I think, Professor Vasuki just initiated the whole philosophical and theoretical background of online education and how it should be structured and how it should be. Now it is time to respond. I think preliminarily, I expect teachers and people are working in that area should respond to this presentation. Particularly, we can raise our queries, doubts, and we can share our expectations, and we can share our questions and with expected answers also. I request, at first I request Honorable Vice Chancellor sir to respond over this, and also please guide us in further question answer session. Thank you, sir. Sorry. Yeah, fine.
So thanks once again on my personal behalf for providing us a broad perspective-based policy framework for preparing online education. Not only online education policy, this framework useful to all policies, in my opinion. As a student of public administration, public policy and governance, I taught all these papers when I was in university, sir. I taught public policy and also governance, management, almost all papers I have taught. So generally, when we teach public policy, the order of in government side, policy, act, then statutes or procedures, then program, lastly procedures. Then act after act will come to statutes. So this is the broad framework we follow. And policy is not a rigid document. It requires review and change now and then as per the context changes. That is also another important dimension of the policy or policy studies in general. So, sir, here I want to initiate discussion about the policy, online education policy from the regulatory framework. Because for some time I was there in the DEB committee also. During our time in UGC DEB committee, this online ODL regulations and online educations were merged. The latest document also, these two regulations were there, both on ODL and online together, and we have merged. They should go together also. So that we have already done. So in my opinion, or in my understanding, by and large, what my experience say, the regulatory bodies in our country, apart from these multiple regulatory bodies, multiple restrictions and all this, the entire regulatory framework itself is based on negative framework. They are negative, no doubt about that. So you go through the regulations, whether it is ODL online. They say what not to do first. Then how to do. These are only two aspects they are mainly focused. What Sir said in his lecture also, legal framework. Even in Act also, crime and punishment. These are the crimes. If you do crime, these are the punishments. CRPC. It's like a CRPC code. Criminal Procedure Code. Nothing but even regulations also go in the same manner. So we did not come out that colonial framework, whether I am right or wrong. That is my understanding. The question here is, our universities are known for creative thinking and creative application of understanding the reality and also applying and adopting the regulatory frameworks. So, by and large, our understanding is the regulatory framework in our India, or DEB framework, or whichever AICT framework, or whichever framework it is, they are restricting the universities to move forward, not providing autonomy, not providing freedom to think and change. In these circumstances, our major challenge before us is how to, I don't say avoid or bypass. We have to create a framework within the regulatory framework, how best we can move forward and think creatively to evolve ourselves, our policy, to our changing needs and also our progress of the institution. So this is the big challenge I feel. Keeping this present regulatory framework and also our needs, because our needs are changing fast. But regulatory bodies are not in a mood to see these changes, maybe for various reasons, maybe financial constraints of the governments. They ask, if we want to move very fast, we will ask for more resources, more funds, more than government doesn't want it. This dynamics, political dynamics are there. We cannot avoid political dynamics in the policy frame. So that is the reason regulatory framework operates here. So why I am telling all this is, being a student of political science and public administration, coming from social science background, always this these aspects of the policy frame or regulatory frame of regulatory bodies or government will come in the way as hurdles. How to move and how to cross these hurdles. So this is my concern, sir. I don't know how do you respond to this. Kindly, I request you to give a response. And your experience also in central university, because your universities are very rich, unlike state universities. You have more resourceful than us, but we are, you know that we are suffering with resource crunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for raising that very important question, because yes, I agree that the regulatory frameworks are mostly restrictive in nature, and even if a university thinks out of the box, it is largely restricted by the framework that is put in place by, believe me, those frameworks are not put in place by educationists. Those are written by some bureaucrats. Okay, and bureaucrats will never ever understand A. B. They will never want to give up their power. Okay, so whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, the regulatory framework will tend to be restrictive. Unless, the big man sitting at the top decides that unless the big man sitting at the top decides to review all the regulatory frameworks, have them review and say, make more liberal frameworks. Now, that's a dream that we can only dream. Okay. Now, in the given situation, how do we go about doing things? One of the ways of doing it would be to look beyond the programs that we are currently offering. Let me put it in perspective. For example, we are offering a separate program in MA in sociology, MA in political science, MA in public administration, MA in economics, MA in whatever, MA in whatever. There are several MAs that we offer. Is it possible for all of these people to come together and offer a program on MA in liberal arts, which will have a little bit of economics, a little bit of policy making, a little bit of political science, a little bit of sociology? Is it possible, for example, for Department of Economics, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Department of Social Work, all of these people to come together and offer a course on development studies? Because development studies is the happening program in the world today. Everybody, there is a huge demand for development studies graduates, and there are not enough graduates. There is a huge demand for students with liberal arts backgrounds, not limited to one stream. Thousands of IT companies are looking for people with liberal arts backgrounds. We just need to reorient ourselves and offer a program in liberal arts. Now, you will have a number of takers for that program. So when regulatory frameworks keep constricting us, we will need to find ways of pushing them forward. Yes. Because as educationists, as intellectuals, our job is to make sure that our students don't lose out when they get out of this main gate. Our job is to make sure that our students shine when they get out of the main gate. So we will have to think creatively. We will have to think, out of the box. There was a time, I'm sure most of you would have gone through that process also. There was a time when UGC said, if you want to offer online courses, you have to go on to DEB website, register yourself. Only if we clear your application, you should be able to offer online courses. University of Hyderabad decided we will not register at all. Dekhenge, kya karte? Will they shut down University of Hyderabad? We said we will not register. Within 6 months, regulations changed. They came out with a notification, gazette notification saying, if you are within top 100 NAC, you can offer online courses without even asking us.
Now back accreditation.
If you are an IOE, Institution of Excellence, you don't have to ask us, you can launch online courses. I thought we did the right thing. We did not register. We did not go begging, saying, sir, please allow, please allow. Nahi karna. Kya kar lete? Will they shut down a university? They will not. So you have to look at where we can work within the framework. You will have to look at where the framework itself provides loopholes. I know, I don't know, somebody said this is getting streamed on YouTube also, but yes, you have to look at loopholes in the regulatory frameworks. Because the people who wrote those frameworks are also human beings, just like us.
But this is
No. Even if you don't edit it, it is okay. I'm not saying something wrong, right? I'm not saying something criminal. I'm saying the people who wrote those regulatory frameworks are also human beings like us. There could be loopholes in those regulatory. We have to find them. थोड़ा एक लेंस पकड़ के बैठना पड़ेगा. करेंगे तो we should be able to do that.
This is one aspect. One aspect is about our attitude. Academicians' attitude. We have to come to a stage, most of them. Exceptions. We have almost restricted ourselves in compartmentalizing. Compartmentalizing. Confining ourselves to our own departments.
Absolutely.
Own disciplines.
Absolutely.
That's all. Then you don't push yourself out of box. These are another major problems.
Well, that is something that our own education taught us.
Yes. That is sad.
See, let us not blame individuals alone. Let us not blame the individuals alone. It is the education also that taught us. What is your specialization, sir? Sir, my specialization